folks. Welcome to another edition of the Ominous Hour. Turn this nice music down a bit. I like having that in the background. Who knows, maybe they'll try to copyright squat me again because I'm using such a well-known piece of music, but it is from a public domain collection. So, let's see how it goes. Today's topic. Today's topic is going to be talking about a very old symbol and digging into its true and esoteric meaning for those who want to go beyond what the flim-flam soul catchers are telling you about things. Talking about the very ancient symbol, which some people might remember as this, the yin yang. Now, this is one way that people might envision drawing it. Many people probably remember it this way, as just a simple circle with white and black patches in it. And they will tell you, if you ask them what it means, that, oh, it symbolizes that there's a balance between light and dark and everything, and that we have to go towards the light and not towards the dark, except the light and the dark are moving towards each other. So they might tell you, well, it doesn't matter if you're light or dark, because it doesn't really matter. There's no good, there's no evil, there's no up or down, there's no reality. Everything's just a dream. And you'll get all sorts of interesting stuff out of this symbol without even realizing that this isn't really that symbol. And the more astute of my audience will have gathered that there's something missing here. What is missing? Well, let's load up a different version of it and remind ourselves. Oh, that's more like what we remember as the yin yang. It's got a light patch in the middle of the dark and a dark patch in the middle of the light. Interesting. What does this bring to mind now? Oh, it's two little fishes swimming around each other, biting their tails. Maybe it means everything is cyclical. Everything's going to happen again and again and again and again. And if you don't like it now, blink your eyes and you can wake up and you'll be back in the other cycle or whatever. So this is also where a lot of the kind of stupid notions, pardon me, of creation being a cyclical event come from. Okay, this is classically what the yin-yang is, and many people have different ideas about what the light and the dark patches in it are. I'm going to tell you today what the real story is, what the real message behind this symbol is. Let's see if I can move it out a little bit so it doesn't block so much of my beautiful face. Okay, so the truth of the matter is that for the esoteric set, spiritual scientists, this is a representation of creation. How it started, at least, and a simple-minded idea of how it proceeds. Okay? So, imagine, if you will, a supreme consciousness, a first consciousness, who wanted to give his family, all the other consciousnesses that had spawned off of the original one, a chance to demonstrate the value of their ideas competition with each other. Okay? That first consciousness would create a playing ground, a circle, if you will. And within that playing ground, that space, which contained nothing, give his first two children, probably the most mature and most ready for responsibility, the opportunity to dispute each other, to have a debate in creation. Call one the white team, the other the black team. And call this creative space, this first creative space, the first multiverse. Why is it a multiverse? Because you have two different creative spaces now. You've broken this total creative space into two universes. Now, why would you represent it this way instead of as just an even circle? Because these spaces are in competition and they are not fixed. But what is true is this space is created with the first law, first version of karma, which is, like all laws of force and debate between two minds, two consciousnesses, is an exertion of force between them. You're trying to essentially force the other party to concede you are right about something. And that's what creation is all about. Putting ideas into practice and seeing who's right. And when something has been demonstrated, then to the other's satisfaction, then it becomes part of both universes' understanding. Follow me? Okay, so let's just imagine that this white part represents Son, the firstborn maybe of God. And the black part is the secondborn, the daughter, the second fiddle, second string, the resentful one because I wasn't first. Oh, you always like the oldest child better than me. Until a younger child was born, and then they both gang up on the younger child and say you like them better. This is the nature of families, isn't it? Okay, so, as I've told you before, the physical world, the multiverse, which is many physical worlds actually, began with two universes. A God universe, if you will, and an anti-God universe. You can give them other monikers, light, dark, good, evil, male, female. This is your prerogative to view it that way, but that is, in every sense, a political view. It's a view based upon a certain bias. Because the truth of the matter is, once something works, once the gods of a universe, the God of a universe, and the God of all the universes agree on something, it pretty much becomes a law. Once you've driven enough photons around the multiverse to be pretty certain of it, there's pretty much no argument what a good speed of light is. And that speed of light applies everywhere, except where it doesn't, perhaps, because you can conceive of a universe that doesn't obey the conventional laws of physics. Okay? So back when this whole thing got started, there were no laws. There was a creative space, a whiteboard. And this completely empty whiteboard was filled with the first law of karma, governing the two souls that were going to fill the different pieces of the whiteboard. Okay, you guys, whatever you do, one, take the opposite position from the other and argue it out. How do you argue it? Okay, this one has an idea. You don't get to have your idea be true until it's been tested by your sister. Sister, you don't get to have your way until your test is confirmed by your brother. And this is how the creative multiverse worked in its first incarnation. This is how karma worked in its first incarnation. It was a way of having the two brightest children of God create within the first law of karma, equal and opposite. If you create it here, you have to prove it here. If you create it here, you have to prove it here. And when you can agree on creation that seems to match a reality that everybody agrees on, then that becomes law. Okay, now you can continue on this path of creation for quite some time if you want, only allowing the two children to play. But if you've got a lot of other children who've got their own idea of what's good and bad and what it is, what they'd like to create, you need to have space for them to create in. And this is where the dots come in. Okay? Once you've got a framework of space that everybody's satisfied with, how three, 4 dimensions work, however many you created at this given point, you decide, well, now we need something to put there. How do those ideas get proven in without testing them in the whole creation? Create a little sub-universe here. And within that sub-universe, you create its antithesis here. And you test out this little idea within the context of this bigger set of ideas that have been proven, that have been accepted more universally. Or at least, universally, I would say, because you've got two universes. You've got the universe of positive matter and the universe of negative matter. We observe the universe of positive matter. Call it positive matter. For positive, it's positive. And anything that's not positive is negative. We could just as easily have called it negative and it'd be positive. And that is how things get started. This is how karma makes the physical laws of the universe go around, equal and opposite reaction. That's true of all forces, right? When you do something, equal opposite reaction. This is the physics of karma, as I told you last time. And what essentially then starts happening is individual souls decide whether they want to create in this universe or that universe. And their creations create a force that elicits an opposite reaction in the other universe. That doesn't have to be identical. May have been. In some cases, maybe it is. But it can just be that the antithesis of the energy of this thought becomes active there. And for instance, if it's a thought about government, the light universe may be trending towards authoritarian governments with an all-powerful leader. And the dark universe will then probably be trending towards chaos. And every soul for himself, every molecule for himself law. Until they decide which one makes sense to apply everywhere. And that's what gets applied. And there may be localized places where some souls are still experimenting with the idea of absolute power, and others are experimenting with absolute chaos. But it becomes more localized once a higher rule takes effect. And who's decided what the higher rule is? What works? Okay, so in practice, if we look at what the laws of this little corner of the multiverse were before humanity became involved in technology, well, there's systems of authoritarian government, systems of very egalitarian government, very chaotic systems in nature. So that tells me there wasn't a clear winner. There's not a clear benefit one way or another. It depends. Or the battle's still being fought. My contention more is the battle is still being fought, and it's being fought by more and more advanced versions of karma. How do souls evolve? How do souls grow up? Okay, so let's tie this to this microcosm is basically the linkage between the truth of physical realm and the truth of the soul, the truth of karma, the truth of force. It doesn't say that you shouldn't use force. It doesn't say karma is a bad thing. In fact, you cannot possibly have a life without dealing with karma. Every time you have a meal, you've taken a choice to feed yourself instead of whatever else you could have done with that food. If you put a fence around a plot of land and call it yours, this is a karmic action. You've made that property, made everyone around aware that you claim that property as your own and you're going to defend it. You're going to claim ownership over the produce of that plot. Is that an evil thing? No. It's not evil to want to prolong an incarnation. What is evil? Well, I think you could realize that if you prolong your incarnation at the expense of somebody else's, that's kind of evil. But what if that somebody is an animal, a plant? Okay, they do have souls. They have some level of consciousness. Does that mean that you don't eat? Air has a consciousness. If you take air into your lungs, you're changing the destiny of those air molecules. Did they ask you to breathe them in? Well, no. Well, maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe people go around, oh, there's some good air. Oh, they wanted to be part of my existence. I don't know if that's what you think. Could be. Or it could just be a rationalization, like much of what people believe about karma, about life, about death. This is essentially why we argue about everything. I can tell you that there's no easy answers. There's not supposed to be easy answers. If everything was easy, there would be no physical universe. If it was easy to say what was right or wrong, what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, what's going to make a better future, if that was easy, there wouldn't be any need for the existence of a physical universe. We would not be here enjoying life today as we do if it was simple. If all this didn't exist, if God had given us free will and free thought and the freedom to argue with each other and debate and create and destroy, there would be nothing in the universe. No need for anything. It would just be change is evolution. Not all change is good. Not all evolutions succeed. This is why this is such a good model to demonstrate how thoughtful the first creator was in setting everything up on the basis of karma and allowing more experienced souls to encompass the experiments of less experienced souls. And, the truth be told, let's say this represents the primordial multiverse. And there's the positive universe and the negative universe. And maybe this big dot represents the first galaxy cluster. Maybe there's other dots around of different sizes and different compositions that aren't necessarily white and black, but they're other colors that represent competing ideas of how to build a perfect galactic cluster. And those competing ideas energetically have to stay more or less in balance until one idea becomes predominant and it overshadows the other. If that's what is, in fact, the healthiest solution. It may be that the two ideas need to coexist. The universe, anti-universe need to coexist because of laws like the conservation of matter, conservation of charge. There are things that need to be balanced. There are things that don't need to be balanced. And the creation of the multiverse has been a process of making balance, making symmetry less important because it's very restrictive. Okay, so if you're approaching this symbol from a standpoint of thinking things are already perfect or never will be perfect, never could be perfect, you're like counting yourself out from creation. You're saying, oh, it's all going to be cyclical. I'm just going to push for the next cycle. Well, everything is bad because we're in a patriarchy, so I'm going to push for a matriarchy. Everything is bad because white people are supreme, so I'm going to push for black people to be supreme. This is stupid. It's dumb, low consciousness thinking. Now that kind of thinking was fine for the early multiverse because it was bounded by the laws of physics. But once we get a little more sophisticated, okay, we've found a way to build galactic clusters, and they're all over the place. And maybe there happens to be one galactic cluster that is God's best idea. And there's another galactic cluster that represents anti-God's best idea. Okay, let's see where we go from here. Let's get out our trusty drawing tool. And let's work on making galaxies. Come on, where's our galaxy? Okay. Let's just try. Let's put a little galaxy out here. Why did that not work? Oh, there's our little galaxy. Okay, so we make a galaxy. And the energy of that galaxy creates a disturbance in this pattern. That disturbance has a certain amount of inertia going against it because it doesn't match the current pattern of the multiverse. So, what do we do then? If that disturbance is going to stay, it's got to be balanced. It's got to have energy that's feeding it. Where can that energy come from? Well, the best source of energy is from this alternate universe, the thought energy of whoever created that. And that's why you need these two universes. One is thinking, the other is implementing and testing. Okay, at some point, somewhere, we decide, oh, you know what, this would be the perfect galaxy. And we're going to put it, well, I don't know, let's put it in the middle of this. Although there might be reasons why the perfect galaxy might be somewhere else. And perhaps at the same time, we want to have let's build this galaxy. Perhaps at the same time, we want to have another galaxy that is the perfect anti-galaxy. It's not the mirror image or the exact opposite of the other it, but its net energy is fed by the idea of the anti-universe into the positive universe, or vice versa. I think you can see that positive, negative doesn't really mean anything at this point. Okay, so let's change our brush. So we're drawing with white now. There we go. Oh, maybe there's the perfect galaxy in the positive universe. Yay! Now, we need things in that. We need maybe a solar system. What would be the perfect solar system? I think you can see where we're going here. We're gradually developing smaller and smaller gradations of a perfection, a goal, if you will. Now, what's the definition of perfection when you're talking about the ideas of souls, of free souls that are thinking their own thoughts and wanting their own things? I would contend that the goal of perfection is to make a better system for training these souls to be better scientists, better artists, better administrators of creation. And to do so, and allow experiments to be conducted in the smallest test tube that is reasonable, and then spread to the rest of the multiverse, one would eventually want to make a container for the soul that was capable of thought, that could encompass the thoughts of a soul, could give it a boundary for a given lifetime, and let it achieve what it wanted to achieve through many lifetimes in different places, different bodies, different locations, different times, different circumstances throughout the greater multiverse, with the idea that ultimately what you're looking for is for these smaller entities, these smaller test tubes, individual people even, to be able to experiment with the most dangerous thoughts in a very localized setting, in a very bounded experiment of one lifetime, with a lot of boundary conditions around it based upon what kind of body, what kind of vehicle that soul is operating within. So this symbol is basically, if you think about it, encapsulating into a very simplistic idea of what the individual is doing within the context of their environment, their universe. And it encapsulates the idea of there being a universe of thought, and a universe of action, implementation. And this interplay between thought and action, thought imagined reality and reality is how creation works. And what makes a creation successful is if that thought can gain enough energy to be a permanent fixture in the universe, locally or globally. The biggest thoughts, the latest version of karma that's been fully implemented is going to affect the entire multiverse, because karma is one of the most important laws, right up there with the laws of electromagnetism, right up there with the workings of gravity, right up there with every other well-established physical constant. And it's actually the most important of all those laws because it is the law that relates thoughts to creations, thoughts to implementations, thoughts to experiments. And as I've told you many times, what we are doing when we make a thought real is experimenting with it. If I have a thought to make a new product, to make a new kind of chip that is going to interface with your brain and will take over more of your subconscious thinking so you can do more conscious thinking. Or maybe take over your conscious thinking and make it seem subconscious. I was making a chip that I wanted. That's probably what I'd be working toward. Maybe even kind-heartedly thinking that they couldn't really think for themselves. They needed more help knowing what was right and wrong. Mother Goose chip, if you will. This is a lot of what goes on in the thought process of people doing product design right now. People, the visionaries, thinking what's next for humanity. And approaching that thought from, different fundamental points of view. You approach it from an atheist point of view. What is a good chip to put in a brain? Well, you might think, well, it's one that one that makes me money, one that makes me the most popular billionaire in the world. That must be good. Sounds good to me. Or you might say it was one that regulates the body metabolism and makes people not want to eat so much when there is a limited amount of food. Suppresses their appetite, suppresses their sexual desire. Oh, this would be good because then people wouldn't have so many babies and the world wouldn't be overpopulated and nobody would suffer because their brain is just telling them they don't want to fuck. And it's all bad anyway because, sex is, my religion says it's horrible. Unless you're going to have a baby. Wait a minute, I thought we didn't want to have babies. There's a lot of mixed up people because there's a lot of mixed up understandings of what's going on here. And, two big camps that kind of have divided the world between them. One saying that creation is all about random processes, and thinking is a random process. I'm just thinking what I'm saying to you because chemicals are going off in my brain that just happen to mash up in just the right way to get me to say just the right words at just the right time. I gotta tell you, I think atheists are so fucking stupid, it's not funny. And I'll say that to your faces, and I would love for you to tell me I'm wrong and prove it. You morons can't even understand that thinking itself is proof of creation. The fact that we have a disagreement about God is proof that there must be some higher power. Because chemicals don't have arguments. And on the other side, you've got the old traditional religionists who are stuck in this idea that there's one supreme, almighty creator, master of the universe, made everything in 7 days, 6 days actually. Only took 6, and then got to take a whole day off for golf or whatever. I mean, this camp is just as stupid, illogical. I don't know how to break it to you guys, but you're just fucking wrong. And that's why atheists can shred you in an argument. Because they can demonstrate things that have been created by things other than God. The fact that you have ideas, that you create things, means that God is not all powerful. God is not all knowing. God is not the master of the universe, just the first creator that set up the framework for more creations. This wonderful framework based upon successive implementations of karma, which is behind every physical law, every interaction, every relationship between everything, because everything has a soul. Large or small, and souls are organized into bigger thought buckets, so that the human being is the oversoul of many, many smaller souls, which organize themselves in organs as conduits of blood, as blood itself. Each of these existences has its own reality, its own level of consciousness that it operates within, its own set of rules, its own laws of karma. And as it applies to the souls in our body, one can imagine that there would be some interesting karma resulting from a heart that serves a body well, a heart that is good at detecting when is the right time to beat faster or the right time to beat slower. And there's a certain decision point that happens automatically that is sort of reflexive. And that represents knowledge gained through generation after generation after generation of human hearts. And, so the oversoul of an individual heart may not have a whole lot of awareness of itself, but the oversoul of the idea of a heart, the idea of the human heart, has an incredibly rich and varied history. This is why the heart is one of the organs that is most intimately linked with our understanding of religion, our understanding of the spirit world. This is why the heart and the head are always talked about as being in conflict. Some people will say, oh, your heart, follow your heart, follow your heart. Your head is going to lead you astray. Your head is just ego. That's one way of viewing it. You could just as easily say, follow your head, follow your head. It's the only one that is really thinking with you. Your heart is just pulling you off on tear-jerking sojourns into illogic. That's no more right than the other way of thinking of it. And the human being, the oversoul of all these organs, all of these different soul tribes, its particular representative of these other soul tribes, is in a leadership challenge, if you will. Which parts of my body am I going to listen to? Oh, I'm part of bigger bodies. I'm part of a body called a country. I'm part of a body called a community. I'm part of a body called a political party or a religion. And how am I going to make my decisions in the context of all these bodies that belong to me or I belong to? Some of them I have no choice. For the long haul, the bodies that are part of me, unless I devise ways to replace them and change all my organs to other bodies, which is an interesting proposition. I think if you ever have studied much on what happens with organ transplants and the characteristics, which interestingly enough often accompany organ transplants, people can have almost an entire change of character after having a heart transplant, for instance. We can't do brain transplants, so I'm not sure, what the effects of that would be, but I can guarantee you that it wouldn't be exactly the same as, oh, well, you had a brain transplant, therefore your whole consciousness is in this new body. Sorry, that's not the way it works. Trust me, when we get there, the first brain transplant does happen. Jethro Bodine, brain surgeon, is going to be a little bit surprised. Anyway, I think I pretty well covered the esoteric meaning of this symbol. I'll probably think of one or two more things I wanted to say about it, but here's where I'll leave it off with. Those of you who follow my channel who know me know that I have a symbol that I use for my teaching, which is related to this. So this might be a good time to pull that up and give you my rationale for making that the omnist symbol that I use in all my work. Okay, so this is what I use as my logo. What's the rationale behind it? Well, I'll tell you. It has the traditional yin-yang, but now it's been subdivided again. This time with colored, red and blue. Similar pattern. What's the significance of that? Well, there's a few things that I was going for that I thought were pretty important. One thing is, if you'll look at how the pattern is now, if you look up close, let's zoom in on this in fact a little bit. Oh my, if we move in close, it looks looks surprisingly like a cross. If we move a little further away, oh, it looks a little bit like swastika, which is another symbol that has a long and tortured history in our species. Okay, so the idea conveyed here are many. That the future is not just two universes. The future is many universes, which have a balancing effect on each other. In fact, one could subdivide this into an infinite number of universes. Each universe kind of based upon the core essence of an individual soul combined with, basically the positive essence and the negative essence. Because every soul has a light and dark side. Every soul has shades. Every strength has a weakness. Every weakness has a strength. Now, another thing you might notice here, let's zoom back in a little bit. The framework of all this is not black like the original yin-yang. It's purple. Purple is an interesting color. It's an interesting color for two reasons. Purple is actually what you get when you mix blue and red. And funny enough, the frequency of purple, color purple, is higher than either blue or red. In fact, in visible light terms, the last light you can see before your sensory apparatus becomes dead to anything higher is called, or could sense, ultraviolet. Have you heard of ultraviolet radiation? Okay, this is what's beyond violet in the color spectrum. So purple, this is why I call my outfit Purple Passion Productions. High frequency passion is where it's all at. In the soul's development. That doesn't mean you don't have low frequency passion. That doesn't mean that you don't have normal, everyday urges to eat, to reproduce, to be silly, waste time, chat with your friends, spout out a bunch of nonsense. It doesn't make it bad. You're not wasting your time. You do it consciously. And anything we do consciously can serve to identify something higher in our nature. I can't count the number of times that I've been randomly looking at information because I was kind of bored and was not feeling that passionate about anything on a given day, and run across something that, bang, made me want to do a podcast. Made me want to contact an old friend. Made me want to contact somebody that maybe I'd hurt in the past, or had ignored, or whatever. Just say, hey, sorry that happened. Something I forgot to do. Got to pay somebody back. You know what? I wonder if they're still out there and have a PayPal account. I'm going to send him that $5 I owed him. Karma works in really strange ways. And if you shut off your sensitivity to it, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to keep roiling around in this mess in the middle. And that's where this outside of this whole thing comes together. Because once you find out what your purple is, what your passion is, what your higher purpose is, that's when you really get to playing the game of soul. That's when you start radiating out from this mess and become a soul that's on a mission, not from God, be a God of your own making. You look at people like Beethoven, Mozart, Einstein, Newton. I'm not going to actually include Tesla in that bunch because I think guys like him are a better example of a failed Messiah. Somebody who had a chance to have a Messiah life, but just kind of threw it away, trying to make a name for themselves, telling whatever fictional story got them funding for their pet project. This is not a Messiah. I like to have a Messiah life. And the vast majority of the folks that have had a Messiah incarnation in our species, you've never heard of. Or they're just a footnote to history. But they did something that was very important in the creative process of the multiverse. Created a new style of art, a new form of symphony, a new instrument, a new way of understanding the world around us. Maybe not perfect, but useful. So useful that it stuck. Why we're still teaching Isaac Newton's laws of physics, even though some of them are not necessarily true in all places. They work in some places. This is why some kinds of art are still being produced, and others are like, well, this kind of art's not really necessary anymore because it's just so photographic that we might as well take a picture of it. And so we still see impressionist, expressionist art, but the realist art that was very popular at one time is kind of passé. It's become the realm of political art, maybe. I don't know. At any rate, the radiant things coming off here actually have tied to all this. If you count them up, see there's three, and there's 8. 8 times 3 is 24. 4 times 12. And 12 is a very magic number. 12 is the number of levels it takes consciousness to get to Godhood, full Godhood, to be equivalent, not the same, equivalent to any other senior creator. Full creator who has their own universe within this dividing multiverse that started with 2 universes and which drives other universes of thinking. Now, universes are independent things. Okay? Men and women are dependent things. There is no universe, no feminist universe. There's no masculine universe. Okay? It just doesn't exist. If your God is feminism, you're insane. I'm telling you, you are literally insane as a human being to make your God, your one God, woman. They don't exist outside the context of men. Same with men. They don't exist outside the context of women. You may create a society run by women. It will be no more successful than a society dominated by men. Matriarchy is just as dark and evil as a patriarchy. Anytime you make one sex to be the preferred sex, the better sex, okay, you are being stupid. Stupid with a capital S. Okay? This is creating an evil where there is none. Creating an elitism that is not deserved. No female in the entire world deserves to be thought well of just because they are female, any more than any male in this world deserves to be thought better of just because they are male. This is an elitist thought. Elitism is not a good thing. When we act like an elitist, we feel entitled to privileges. If we think we're better than other people, then we believe that our meal is more important than their meal. Our needs are more important than their needs. This is how elitists think. It's an entitlement. And it is a violation of the law of karma. It's a sin to be elitist. Now, we have to make choices. We have to choose, well, okay, I've got to eat today. I've got what society tells me is my money. What society tells me I have bought for myself. A house, or a lease on our house, a place that I am, by the laws of my society, entitled to use and occupy and make the decisions for that little locale, that little space. This is not elitism. It is not entitlement. It is following the rules of a culture that we have chosen to belong to. If you don't like the rules of your community, if you don't like the rules of your country, change them or change your location. Now, sometimes that's not easy, and this is where another aspect of karma comes in, because if those rules are oppressive, if the rules apply unequally between people that have many things and people that have few things, that is unfair. And unfairness is against karma too. If you are unfair to others, you will suffer karma that needs to be healed. Any parent can relate to what I'm saying. If you have more than one child, your children are going to be constantly accusing you of being unfair, of favoring the other child. Or even if you have one child, your child is going to be accusing one parent or the other of being unfair. or will be trying to use or manipulate one parent or the other, try to get what they want, and make them feel like they're the favored parent. These power games are ubiquitous to our species. That's part of the reason why humanity was created. We weren't created to make harmony. We were created to deal with power conflicts. Always, forever, no matter what. And to pretend like they don't happen is a cop-out. And that's another thing you can do to hurt your karma. By being above everything. Oh, well, this is beneath me. I'm so much more advanced than that. I've reached a higher spiritual level, so I can just disconnect from this and not let it affect me. Okay? This is called spiritual bypass. Also a bad thing to do karmically. Because if you can sit back and watch a problem and not take a stand, not try to understand it, not try to figure out, well, is there anything that I could do to make this problem better? Maybe the first thing I could do is try to understand it better. And if there's a conflict about what's going on and who's right about it, I'm hearing one thing from one camp and another thing from another camp. You know what? I might want to do a little bit more investigation and figure out why there's two or more mainstream narratives, and whether there are non-mainstream narratives that might be closer to the truth. Not getting at the truth is something that's going to hurt you. It's going to be a karmic problem for you. Why? Because when we don't have a consistent truth in front of us, we have cognitive dissonance. Conflicting information. You don't know who to believe. Okay, you can cling dogmatically to one, but if it's not the truth, then you will constantly be challenged with evidence that's like, this is not consistent with this. And there's nothing that is more cognitive dissonant than sitting back and saying, well, whatever the TV tells me, whatever CNN tells me is the news today, the most important issue, the thing I've got to go get all excited about and post memes and share things and beat my chest with virtue. If you're following that and you've noticed how quickly those things change, and you haven't figured out that there's something up there that you might want to dig a little deeper into, you are in a karmic hole. You're in a karmic hole, increasing your own cognitive dissonance, or shoving it under the rug and saying, well, it's not my problem. I'm going to go watch another series of Friends or whatever. Oh, there's something new on Netflix I've got to watch because everybody's watching it. This is another thing that you do. It's fun and it's entertaining. But if you don't know that every single bit of programming that you see on any commercial source is programming. They're trying to control your mind. They want you to think a certain way. And it's very easy to spot programming versus information. Information doesn't state, this is the truth. Information says, this is what some people believe, this is what other people believe, this is the evidence that goes with that, and this is the evidence that counters that. News, when it's done right, presents just the facts. It doesn't interpret them. It says, well, one might conclude this, but it also says one might conclude that. And again, I mean, there used to be a law that was enforced by the FCC to make sure that both sides of the issue were covered. And yes, that law was abused, and there was like controlled opposition that covered the opposing position in a poor way to reinforce the mainstream position. But I mean, I don't know what to tell you if you're not able and willing to dig beyond that. Because you're going to have increasing dissonance in these days. And it's what's challenging everybody to rise to this God level. Okay? Because this is what's going on right now. Our species has reached the point where if it's going to continue, if it's going to be allowed to continue to evolve, it's got to continue as a God species. A God species is one that attracts souls that are on a God path. Not all souls become gods. Most souls are perfectly content to go through incarnation after incarnation after incarnation as whatever soul vehicle the multiverse deems suitable for you. If you want to have an easy, thought-free life, you're perfectly welcome to incarnate as a grain of sand and have nothing to worry about but the occasional cataclysm that puts you on a new beach. There are all kinds of roles for all kinds of souls, and most of them are to a very thoughtful soul, a very dynamic soul, boring as hell. But that may be where a lot of you are headed. That seems to be what you want, based upon your viewing preferences. Because you know what? What's going on with the media, with corporations, corporate PR, big tech, social media, it's all, at a small scale, what is driving the multiverse. At a big scale, with all the souls. That's the essence of what humanity is up to, is trying to play God right now. And not doing a very good job of it. It's rather amusing. But this is the whole reason humanity exists. Because it is a species that has been specifically evolved first to be a chosen species for an experiment. A great experiment in finalizing karma. That experiment is nearly done. Well, it's effectively done. We're not going backward. We're not going to start over on the experiment. It's got some cleanup to do before it's done, but it's converging on a singularity, which is coming no matter what you do. After that point, humanity will have served its purpose for that experiment. But you've listened to anything I've told you about how senior creators of spiritual science work, they don't waste the infrastructure from one experiment when it can be reused for another. And the place at which humanity is, the only really useful progress for humanity is not to go become foraging subsistence hunter-gatherer species divided up in tribes of what's left of the technology we've invented. If that was what was needed of humanity, there's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of species out there that serve that purpose and have created a much, much better Eden of a planet for nature lovers. Now, the only path forward for humanity, this is a species that is prepared for souls who are starting out on God's path. That's not the souls that are in the species right now. The species right now, the souls are all over the place. Newbies from every description to experienced souls of every description, because that's how you test karma. You want a wide range of test subjects. When you recycle your next life, or maybe the life after that, I don't know how long it's going to take to do this cleanup phase, but it's not going to be that long. And once the cleanup is done, humanity's not going to be allowed as a choice for an incarnation for anybody that's not on a God path, that doesn't have some higher passion that they've been attracted to through their series of incarnations so far. What choices you're going to get then? Well, you're going to be given a choice of another species, maybe a hive mind species on the other side of the galaxy, a previous winner of a previous version of refining karma. A species of a dead end that proved that, you know what, intelligent hive-minded species just don't go anywhere. They stagnate. There's a lot of places you can go, and you'll learn a lot from those places. It's not necessarily that it's a bad place to be, depending on what kind of personality you have and whether you're an ambitious person or you're a laid-back person. There's a place for everybody. But what I do want you to know is your chance, if you like being human, if you like all the choices we have, if you like all the challenges we have in relationships, in finding moderation in all the temptations there are around, finding the fulfillment of pursuing a passion to what you feel like is a great work of art, a great thought. This is a human thing, and it's a thing that is a God species thing. You don't get this kind of creativity from a hive species. I mean, maybe a little bit from the leadership of them, but their leadership tends to have pretty rotten ideas because their entire existence depends on the working of the hive. That becomes the primary important thing for their thought process, is making sure that the hive brings them nutrients, extends the life of the queen as long as possible, fights off any other hive that gets in the neighborhood. And you can see this in our own species. You can see it in the behavior of organizations, countries that behave like a hive. They become very, very, what's the word? Xenophobic, very, very self-focused, and focused on defense, focused on protecting the leaders from everything else, or protecting the beautiful people, trying to convince you you're part of the beautiful people, as long as you can keep affording the latest vaccines and protective gear they're telling you you need, which is probably not the same protective gear you really need if you are one of the real beautiful people getting all the latest organ transplants in China and getting all the latest technology that's being developed behind the scenes by the world's elite that you're not aware of. And again, this gets back to this kind of pursuit of materialist technology is how species that have non-God directed souls in them behave when they have access to godlike technologies. And they don't use them well. They don't have any spiritual basis for what they're doing. And folks like that are going to self-destruct. And if humanity self-destructs, it's no skin off anybody's back that knows anything about the game of souls. Like, okay, when incarnation is over, I'm going to go to another species. And I know there's other God species out there. They're not human. They haven't been involved in testing this latest version of karma. Nothing wrong with that. They're probably aware of it. Some of the God species are aware that this has been going on and have been part of establishing the chosen species for this experiment. Maybe even at one time thought they were going to be the chosen species for it if they came to Earth and mixed with the local hominids and built up this test tube civilization. It didn't work out that way. That's why the gods and heroes, the hybrids, don't exist so much anymore, except maybe as a small vestige of our genome. That was not what was necessary to get this experiment done. Too much knowledge of what's really going on is a bad thing. Experiment, social experiment especially. If the test subjects know what's going on, there is a tendency towards confirmation bias. If they know they're in an experiment that have a vague notion what the experiment's all about, they'll muck up the result by trying to influence it. Anyway, I'm at a little over an hour now. I think I've rambled long enough. I hope you found that one useful. Like, share, subscribe, debate, comment, any way you want to interact, or tell me I'm full of shit, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I missed something. I find it hard to imagine that anybody doesn't find at least something controversial about virtually everything I talk about. And that's an opportunity, because conflict, controversy, dialogue, discourse, debate is how creation works. You can't make something better just by saying this is better. You have to test it. How do you test it? Well, first test is, does it hold up to the scrutiny of another mind? Does it hold up to the scrutiny of enough minds to convince them to conduct an experiment and participate in that experiment? That's what incarnation is all about, participation in experiment. Some of us incarnate purely for a selfish experiment of who we want to be, who we want to try to be, what we want to learn. what other souls have we been playing with for a while and want to play a new game together. This is the lowest level of consciousness dealing with. Start participating in group experiments. There's a bunch of souls that all are kind of gravitated around this idea of Jesus. I think I want to be one of them. Let's do something special in that universe. That's a higher purpose than just wanting to go have another life playing with your pals, and you play boy this time, and I'll play girl, and let's let him be our dog this time, and then that soul, they've never been our child before, so let's do that. And there's a lot of souls here we do play that are dealing with their path at about that level. Those are not God's souls. They may be fervent Christians, they may be fervent atheists, they may be whatever, card-carrying Democrats, Republicans, you name it. Ukrainians, Russians, Poles, Turks. Those identities are like, what football team do I support? Unless they're backed up by some higher mission. And those higher missions are what drive you to give up your life for your country, give up your life for your religion, give up your life for an ideology. That's okay. I mean, that's the level of commitment that says you've got a God passion, and it's not necessarily good or bad. It may not be doing good or bad for the world around you, but it is a passion, one that is consistent with ideas that are God-level ideas, or could be. Just be careful, because not all God-level ideas are light. Not all God-level ideas lead someplace good, someplace permanent, someplace lasting. And if you want to play for the dark side, your ideas are going to be used as object lessons to others, to show them, see, this is what happens when you pursue this illogical, irrational, inconsistent with natural law idea. And if you want to play devil's advocate, if you're the kind that likes to tweak God's nose, if you will, you're the one that wants to always say no when somebody says this is the way it is. Fine, you want to be the devil's advocate. And your personality type leads you there. That's probably where you're going to go, and that's where you got to go, and that's fine. But don't let anybody push you that way, make you their bitch, make you their useful idiot. This is what propaganda is doing to people. They're realizing, there's a lot of souls that seem like they don't know which way they're going. Let's just push them down this little primrose path. And if you don't break off those paths, you're not in control of your own spiritual destiny. And if you're not in control of your own spiritual destiny, then you are not on a path that's going to lead you to the God level. And you're not on the path that's going to get to participate in this species after this experiment is over. That's just the truth of the matter. I'm not putting you down. I'm not belittling you. I'm just giving you the truth. The cold, hard truth of how creative evolution works. The human species exists for a reason. There are other species that can do what humanity can do. It was created for a specific experiment, and that experiment is nearing completion. It doesn't need to exist outside of the context of that experiment. Will it? Many are hopeful that it will, because it is a very useful species. And it's in a very good place to be useful, because it's on this very isolated planet, isolated arm of the Milky Way, a very special galaxy, in a very special place in God's universe. There's a lot to be said for continuing the species. There's a lot of energy being directed towards making sure the species doesn't self-destruct. At the same time, there's a lot of other species that think that they would be better served in their path, their species karma, their dreams and hopes for their species would be better served by humanity saying goodbye. And yes, those forces are at work and have been at this game a lot longer than our species. Know a lot more than anyone's letting on right now about the truth of how humanity was created, and truth about who has more or less of the whole DNA of the God species that blended with Earth hominid to make humanity. This is why there are people in secret societies preserving bloodlines. One reason. Another reason is because new bloodlines get established, as I've talked to you before. New bloodlines get established based upon the incarnation of special souls in this experiment. The most special of which are the incarnation of God and the first two souls that started this whole karmic experiment, was described in the original yin-yang symbol. Again, this is where the yin-yang, most people don't see that it's a symbol of Trinity. They only see duality or oneness in it. And that is as stupid as you could be to stop there. Find the Trinity in the yin-yang, and you're on your way to a better understanding of yourself and of God and of the divine plan. Anyway, till next time, Omnist Hour, I'll see you then.